What is up, everyone? Welcome to Shaping Success. We are back. A little bit of a week off. I had a little procedure done last Monday, so I'm recovering from that and doing pretty good. But we had to take a little bit of a break because I didn't know how well I was going to be feeling, and I'm glad I did. So what's going on, Robert?
Another fine day. I was talking to my son who is stationed in the army in Brussels, and he was talking about the franticness to which everybody is dealing with the changes in Washington. Let's put it that way. Let's call it that.
There's a lot going
And that
on.
it's well, and it's you just don't realize people use this term status quo bias all the time, but you really just don't realize how entrenched it is.
Mhm.
How people want to stay who they were 5 minutes ago, 5 weeks ago, 5 years ago, whatever, and they do not want to change, and change is the actual only constant.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. There's a lot of things going on that I just don't quite understand why people think the way they do. Like, I just don't get it. There's a lot of common sense things. I don't know if you and I talked about this or my friend Jay and I did, but this Doge thing, they're all throwing a big old temper tantrum about. And what they don't realize or what they don't know or they don't care to see is that this isn't the first time that anyone's done something like this. It's been called something different, but it's happened 2 times in the past where they've tried to balance the budget. They've tried to find where wastefulness is. They try to find where all these things are. And Clinton was one of them. And I think it might have been JFK was the other one. And it's just amazing that people have such complaint about like all these places where their money is going, and they're just pissed off because it's someone who's not elected looking into it. But again, I think the president is the person who has the final say on it. Musk cannot do anything without him saying that it's okay or signing off on it.
Right, and most of the stuff is going to go through Congress anyhow. So this is not this really overcomplicated thing. It was Kevin O'Leary from Shark Tank.
Mhm.
Mr. Wonderful is what he's called. And I think it was on CNBC or CNN. And he said, listen, here's the problem with the entire thing. It's not enough. He
Right.
said, let me tell you, when you come into a company that's suffering and you need to do cuts, he said, whatever that amount is you think you need to do 20% more. He said,
Right.
that's probably accurate. That's just the reality of the situation. He says, my biggest complaint is it's not deep enough.
Yeah, and
So
and that I think is a big thing. Like I think people don't realize like how can you I just don't get it. It's like how can you sit there and listen to these things that are being said about what they're cutting and then go, well, that's great. So we have people suffering over here complaining about, $13 for a dozen eggs or whatever. But the reason why $13 a dozen eggs because we print all this money to send to these other countries instead of keeping it in our own country. And we need to make sure that we are healthy as a country first before we make sure that other countries are healthy. And if we're going to be giving other countries things, I'm not against aid or anything like that. But if we're going to give other countries things, then we should make sure that we have enough here.
yeah, and no one, the concept of a plane when you're in the plane and it's decompressing, and there's a mask drop. What do they say?
Put yours
Put your
on
mask
first.
on first before you help anybody else, right? Um, it's the same across the board. And believe me, the part of foreign aid is so small in comparison to our real budget. The real changes will be in things like DoD
Mhm.
at 8% for 5 years. Okay, that's a big deal. I mean, I'm being serious. That's a big part of our, what's called quote unquote discretionary spending. The entitlement programs, we have to be realistic. We promised people, they paid into them.
Right.
So touching Social Security and things that people have paid into is not right.
Mhm.
It's just not. Why? Because you made a promise and you asked them to pay in some cases they paid in for an entire lifetime. And now you want to change the game just because you can't do math? No, no. Everybody needs to suck it up and shut their mouth about the entitlement part because why? Because you made a promise. Let's keep the promise. The
Yeah.
rest of the stuff, everything else should be on the table, right? Including what they did during the Great Depression was we didn't have a lot of government debt, but they did this across the board with fiscal with city debt, was they basically said, hey, the debt's paying at 6%. Now the debt's paying 2. We're renegotiating. And here's the point. You don't want us to go under. You want us to get fiscally sound. So here's what we're going to need to do. What they've done mistakenly all these years is when interest rates were, like, for example, that the one-year treasury and a 30-year bond have different rates, right? The 30-year you get more than you do one. Well, what they've done is to make the budget look better, is they pushed a lot of the debt short-term, lots and lots of it short-term. And what that has done is put us in the pickle that we keep changing our fiscal balance sheet every time interest rates go up and down. Well, that's not where we should be. So will we have to look at our debt? Yes. Okay. These are the things that smart people like you, me, okay, listen, I'm not any genius. I just finished this paper that involves game theory and math and stuff. And I got to be honest with you, I got to get peer reviewed because I don't know what I'm doing. And I don't mean that in the sense that I don't understand. It's just that this is not my strong suit. But here is my strong suit. If I've got $1,000 I'm taking in every month, right, and I'm spending $1,100, okay, well, $100 has got to come off the table somewhere. And if that means I have to call my credit card companies or my mortgage company and renegotiate my debt, that means I need to call them and renegotiate my debt. If that means I don't have Starbucks again, which I don't drink Starbucks, if I don't have Starbucks again, then I don't have Starbucks. You just have to realize that this whole idea of a balanced budget is, come on, man, really?
Yeah.
We don't have the right, in my opinion, I don't have the right to indebt my grandchildren. Okay, which is what we've been doing.
Yeah.
Shifting this obligation further and further out. This is ridiculous. We haven't paid the Vietnam War off yet.
Oh, geez.
Okay, so, I mean, everybody's got to get real.
Yeah.
And this is the other thing about making war everywhere. Well, guess what? When you have a budget, guess what you don't do? You don't go spend $2 trillion in the Middle East.
Yeah.
Turning a third world country into a third world country. What a shock.
Right.
I mean, this is what are called, politically constrained regimes. Means that the domestic agenda constrains the regime and what they do outside of their borders. It's not a real deep concept, but surprisingly enough, people don't understand it. It's like, we're just going to go make war on everybody. Really?
Yeah.
What if I tell you don't have any money for it?
Yeah, and that's the tough part. It's like they sit there and they act like it's no big deal, and here we are sending all this aid everywhere else. I mean, I think about the amount of taxes. I got a decent return this year because I overpaid in taxes. I was like, I cannot believe I had to pay this much. But still, even the amount that I am getting a return on and the amount that I paid, where is it going? I don't see it going anywhere. And I would way rather that money, we know where it's going. We've been told that Social Security, like the question is even, are you going to get Social Security? My parents always say that. That's the number one thing. It's like, by the time I'm old enough to draw Social Security, is it even going to be there? And they said, that at the way that they're spending it, in 5 years, it'll be gone. And if it's gone, then why am I paying something that I will never receive the money for? Like that's the one thing that you cannot, like if you claim 9 on your taxes, the one thing that they always take is Social Security, no matter what. You don't have to pay the federal government. You don't have to pay the state. At the end of the year, you may owe them some money, but the Social Security, you are not getting back. And it's amazing that they think that they can take that money from you, and then you have no choice but to just be all right with it being gone when it's gone.
Right, and that's the changes that have to be made in the sense of saying you need solvency, right? These programs that people have paid in need to be solvent. If not, that's called fraud. Shockingly, It's not surprising. But beyond that, do you realize when you provide security for other countries, that's foreign aid?
Mm-hmm.
So if you've been providing security for Europe since 1945, that's foreign aid.
Yeah.
Now, it's not under the category of foreign aid. It's under the DOD's budget, but it doesn't make any difference. Isn't that foreign aid?
Yeah, and I think people need to understand that when you say, I believe what you're saying, and this is how I'm looking at it. It's like when we send troops over there to protect a country, that is foreign aid. It cost us money to send those people over. It's not free. It took a ship to get them over there. It took ammunition. It took rifles. It took all the stuff that they need to protect those people, and you have to pay those troops to be there to protect them. That is foreign aid. And to me, that foreign aid is a lot better than just sending them a wad of cash and saying, "Hey, figure it out on your own. Do what you need to do." At least we know for sure where our money's going because we're paying those people to be there to protect them.
Right, but I mean, being the world's policeman is expensive.
Yep.
Okay, doing the things we've been doing is expensive. Exporting jobs everywhere away from our country is expensive.
Mhm.
They keep saying that by exporting jobs, that makes our stuff cheap at Walmart. Here's the point. No, it doesn't. That's a lie. What it does is it makes rich people richer. That's a lie. Because the person that benefits is the shareholders in the major companies. And guess what? The average American is not a shareholder.
Right.
And if he's a shareholder, he's shareholder incidentally inside of his pension plan. He's not a shareholder he's not watching his wealth like we talked about during COVID, right?
Yep.
What happened during COVID? Who got rich? Who got poor? That should tell you if your system's broken,
Right.
right? So who should have benefited and not during COVID? And the answer is everybody should have lost.
Yeah.
Everybody, right? You're rich, you should have lost. You're poor, you should have lost. Everybody should have taken the hit. Why? Because we're in this together.
Yeah.
We really are, and that's not emphasized enough that we are in this together, and it doesn't seem to be. And again, I keep pointing this fact out to people since 1975. The top 10% in America have taken $40 trillion from the bottom 90.
Mhm.
Okay, and that's not me. That's the Rand Corporation. Rand Corporation is a conservative research. This is where the military get their research from. This isn't some far left wing. No. This isn't somebody this is actual numbers. And that kind of inequity in our system makes you and I feel bad when we pay $13 for eggs.
Yep. Yeah, it's pretty amazing. I don't know where it's going from here, and we'll see. And there's a lot of things going on, a lot of things that are trying to get stopped. And I think we're still a ways away from the things that need to get done getting done because we're still confirming people in the cabinet. But I think we're getting closer every single day.
Yeah, I mean, I actually like the idea of this Doge check, right? Mm-hmm. Sending some of the savings back to Americans. I like it because it's got a good feel to it, but it's also bullshit. Let's go ahead and call it. Okay, why? If you're in debt, why are you sending somebody a check?
Right.
I mean, but I get it, and I'm not, and I think that that's a good gimmick for getting everybody involved. But seriously?
Yeah, I agree with that too. Like I'm sitting there thinking, well, what would I do with $5,000 extra? Because that's what they're talking about the amount being. It may be something different. I'm sure it's going to be taxed in some way. It's not going to be just here's this $5,000 check that's going to arrive in your pocket. But yeah, I mean, if we're still that far in debt and you have this extra money that you found, we as a country are in debt. Put it in the national debt and freaking lower the damn national debt. That's all there is to it. And then if we got to, it's just like any other business. If Trump's running it like a business, when I worked at this tire company, every year we had a surplus of funds. And if we had a surplus of funds, then we got a dividend. If we didn't, then we didn't get a dividend. So let's wait until we get a surplus of funds to start handing out money and get the country right first.
Yeah, and that's going to take a minute because you don't. And again, this is where people are very short-term oriented. You screwed it up over 40 years.
Mm-hmm.
Ain't going to fix it in 4.
Okay? Yeah, I mean, do you think there's enough? Do you think there's enough corruption in this whole situation though that it could fix it pretty quickly? I mean, the places where this money is going, like with USAID and with some other places, you're like sitting there going, "Are you kidding me? This is how wasteful we are as a country." Like the Department of Education, things like that, where they're using this money, how it's being divvied out. It's just amazing to me that it cost us this much to run the country.
Well, but it's like my son and I were talking about the military and how the officers end up kind of being forced to game the system because of the way the system's set up. And my point is, why are we gaming anything? This is everybody's in this together. Why are we not saying listen, here's a way to improve this. Let's all improve together. And instead, what people are doing is getting what they can get. And yes, nobody wants their job to be the one that's cut. But
Right.
here's the point. If 1 in 4 jobs, let's pick it out, 1 in 4 jobs in government needs to be eliminated. Well, I'm sorry. That's the way that goes. We can't continue to pay for something that we're either one, not getting, or two, can't afford.
It's amazing too, because like I had a personal situation last year that just made me really wonder as they're talking about cutting all these people from the IRS. I filed my taxes probably about 2 weeks ago. I got my refund already, like last Friday. And 2 years ago, we forgot to claim my son on my taxes. So we filed an amended return because it's quite a chunk of money when you write off a kid. And we're like, we're going to write this off. Well, it took them, they said could take up to 8 weeks for us to get our amended return. However, they could give us our regular tax return in 2 weeks, but an amended one was supposed to take, I think they said like 8 weeks to get it. 30 weeks later, we received the refund check for this amended return. And they have all this abundance of extra people working in the IRS, and they can't get to an amended return within 30 weeks. I mean, it's insane to me. They can hold on to your money as long as they want, but when it's, they have this timeline on how they're going to give it back. Do they really need all these extra people? If they're getting rid of that many people, who's doing their job?
Yeah, and it's not to suggest, it's like when I first started in school, there were, and I'm going to get these figures wrong, but there was like one administrator for every 10 teachers. Mm-hmm. Okay. For my kids, there's like one administrator for every 3 teachers. Why? Yeah. What became so complicated in administration that we created, like computers? Computers were supposed to reduce paper.
Right.
Is that what we think we saw? Did computers really reduce paper, or did they increase paper? And the reality is have we streamlined? Are we always seeking to streamline things? Or are we doing things the way we've always done them before?
Right.
I mean, that's just, in other words, it's not about criticizing everybody. And I think let's back away from the whole criticism thing and just say, listen, let's make this better. Let's make better so my job's easier, right? We don't have to hire more people. We're good with what we have because we made my job easier because we streamlined things. This is where the mindset of everybody should be. Everybody's mind should be in better. Not right. Best, not perfect, better. What can I do to make this situation better? And I don't think that's where people have been. They've been in this mindset of, I want to keep my job. Yeah. And I'm like, you're not going to keep your job. That mindset doesn't keep your job because the world changes. Yep. You've got to evolve. I know it's uncomfortable. My God, I'm the oldest person in every class, including my professors. I'm the oldest person in class, but I'm the one that's basically telling everybody, what? You got to change. You got to evolve.
Yeah.
Right? I'm not into retirement. Yes, I'm retired quasi, but I'm still working. I'm still growing. I'm still trying to change. I'm still trying to think differently. That's the way we should be doing. Even though we're a 100-year-old institution, we should be doing something different. We should be making things more streamlined. Let's see where we can improve things. And it's not about crushing this and no. It's just better.
Yeah. The education system is one of those things that's going to be a rough one to get in touch with too, which I think that's what they're going to start attacking next. A lot of them want to dismantle the Department of Education, which I can't see why you wouldn't. Just as you were talking about, hey, there's 3 administrators or 1 administrator every 3 classes. That's insane to me. There needs to be more teachers in the classrooms. There needs to be, instead of having 30 students per 1 kid, there needs to be 15 students per 1, or 1 teacher per 15 kids, because that's how we're going to reach more kids and be able to help them more to make our country more intelligent. Because instead we just keep adding kids and we're not taking care of the amount of kids that there are, and kids are getting left behind, and we're missing that part. We don't have one of the strongest I don't know, brain bases in in the world because we're not cultivating that. Instead, we're bringing kids down. It's like I think the biggest thing that pissed me off about education was No Child Left Behind. You know, back in the day when they put that out there, and it was like when I was in school, if you did not pass a class, if you did not do the work, then you got held back. You're in third grade, you didn't do all the work that a third grader, you didn't pass all the proficiency and all that stuff. You got to be a third grader again. Same thing with high school. You didn't pass your freshman English class. You got to take your freshman English class when you were a sophomore with your freshman English class. Instead, we sit in a classroom where there's 30 students in there and they gauge where the median is, and then they bring the high kids down to the median and they bring the low kids up to the median. That's where they're at. There's no like gifted kids anymore. And if there are, they're just sitting in class bored and they're not able to push that any further than what they are. It's just amazing to me.
Well, let's put a golf analogy here. Golfers have handicaps, correct?
Yep.
When they play a tournament, do the handicaps matter?
Not in pro golf.
No.
Right?
No. Why? Because it's a competition,
Yep.
right? We're not going to handicap you. Listen, if you're a crappy golfer and you're a 14 handicap, you're not going to survive 2 seconds in this match, right?
Yep.
The point is that life, unfortunately, is like a match. I'm sad to say, compete, don't compete, right?
Yep.
But the idea of competing means that what happens when you're trying to standardize education for everybody? VT programs, here's the difference between my and your generation. 2/3 of our high school class went to VT. 2/3. Why?
Mhm.
Only 1/3 was going to college.
Yep.
What was the point of that? Not everybody was college material.
Yep.
Okay. So what was VT? VT was if you don't think we don't need air conditioning repairmen, if you don't think we don't need computer repairmen, if you don't think we need plumbers and carpenters and stuff, of course we do. Look at what's happening right now. We don't have enough of any of those.
Right.
Why? Because everybody's decided what a good job is. Instead of looking at your skill set, listen, it's like I'm doing this really heavy math, heavy quant class. I'm not quantitative. I have to have help. That's not my gifting. But I'm not going to be a quantitative professor either,
Right.
right? Just like if I'm really good with plumbing, I'm not going to go become an electrician.
Yeah.
I mean, this is not really complicated. I think that's the challenge we put ourselves in, is we won't allow ourselves to gravitate toward our gifting.
Yeah. Well,
Right?
and
If
that's
you're
the thing.
really
It's
a
like
gifted teacher, I'm saying if you were a gifted teacher, why aren't you teaching?
yeah.
Because
Well,
it doesn't pay.
Yeah, no, exactly. That's the problem. It's like you're selecting these people based on where they're okay with being. Like I wasn't going to be okay with. I look at the future, right? Like I'm a planner, and so looking at the future, knowing that in 10 years I'm only going to be making $55,000 a year, and then 10 years after that I'm going to be making $65,000 a year. I'm not okay with that. I'm not okay working somewhere 20 years for nothing. And the only way to get above that is to go into administration and spend more money to make more money, which in the end is really not that much money. It's not really worth it. Go find something where you can make the amount of money that you need to make. I don't know. I was dumb when I made my decision to teach anyway, because I never really I always thought about life as a situation where the money's not what buys you happiness. What buys you happiness is what you're doing, right? Like, and I was happy teaching, but what I found out was being happy and not having enough money didn't coincide, right? Because money is what makes the world go around. And I wasn't willing to sacrifice my lifestyle for, something that I love doing, because I love having enough money to do the things that I want to do outside of that. And, it only goes that far. That's all there is to it. Like loving what you do only goes so far if it's not lucrative for you to be able to do other things. Because in the end of the day, what's everyone's goal in life? Is to retire and go do something that you want to do for fun, that makes you happy. And you can't, and just because you love your job doesn't mean that that's going to be making you happy every single day. It's just weird.
Well, I mean, we have to gut check ourselves when we pay a quarterback $250 million over 10 years. And we pay a teacher over 10 years, 800,000. We need to gut check ourselves because despite what people believe, that quarterback is not going to change the world.
Right.
That teacher is.
Yep.
That teacher is going to affect how many students learning, right?
Yep.
And that's where we as a society, I'm not telling government to do that. I don't want government involved. We need to change that. We need to say things like, you know what? We're not going to spend $1.5 billion for a new stadium. Okay. We're going to invest in our teachers.
Right.
Okay. But instead, what are people making the decision? Oh, well, it's good for us to spend $1.5 billion on the stadium because it's short-term revenue. But the long-term is the capital in the humans we're creating. We're either doing a good job or we're doing a bad job. That $1.5 billion, that stadium, trust me when I say this, 30 years from now, you're going to be tearing that stadium down.
Yep.
Building a new one.
Yep.
Okay. But these students are going to go on for a long time. And this is for us as a culture at the grassroots level, changing the way we do things. And government, senior government, which is what we're talking about, needs to lead the way. Right? Lead the way in streamlining, lead the way in setting priorities that match your and my national priorities. And what happens in Ukraine is not a national priority for me.
Right.
Just not. Okay.
Nope.
Now, I agree that, I can go through the ins and outs of it, but here's the point. They're not on my border. Okay. And they really don't affect my life. And I'm not trying to be isolationist. I'm just trying to say, can we get to my priorities, my family's priorities, my neighborhood's priorities before we get to Ukraine's?
Yep. Yep. Take care of what's going on in your own backyard first before you start taking care of what's going on in other people's.
Yeah.
So, well, Robert, it's good to be back. It was a great discussion again, as usual. We thank everyone for hanging out with us. I appreciate you, CC. Nikki, thanks for hanging out in the chat room there. We've got a couple other people watching as well. Please go over to Apple Podcast and give a 5-star review and tell us why you like the show. We appreciate y'all being here, and we will see you again Wednesday, same time.
Glad you're back, Wes.